Today, we're going to talk about something near and dear to our team, which is digital marketing. Basically, the assumptions that everyone has relied on for the past 30 years have completely changed, even in the past 10 years, and very, very few firms are taking advantage of any of these new available strategies and tactics. As always, thank you, Sylvia, for joining me, and thanks for here. I'm going to share my screen, and we'll see how this goes. I'm going to talk fast, but I'm going to talk about a lot of different concepts here. And this is the first time we're doing this type of presentation around digital marketing this way. Feel free to just jump into the Q&A, into the chat, and we'll see how it goes. To start off, digital marketing. We're going to talk about what are called pirate metrics. Called pirate metrics because they basically, if you just take the first letter, it's R, right? Like a pirate. So these are the metrics that you look at when you're thinking about the full funnel of acquiring customers to your firm and then ultimately retaining them. So what are they? Awareness, acquisition, revenue, referral, and retention. Very simple, 5 different metrics that you can look at for your entire business. Awareness is how many people even know about you. Acquisition would be how good are you at closing contracts? How good is the conversion of people that know about you into becoming clients? Revenue, ultimately, how much cash was received or how much is the dollar value of those projects that you're taking on? Referral, how many clients are referring you month over month? And then retention, of those clients that have been your clients in the past, how many of them are actually repeating work? Why does this matter? No matter like the kind of strategy, your business type, what kind of projects you take on, these are top line numbers that help you understand your business capacity to grow. If you're not, and there are also ways for you to understand what levers are available for you to grow along these different numbers. There's also this idea of the growth equation. So you can kind of if you start off with these top metrics as like the numbers you're looking at on a monthly basis, you can then back into it by saying, okay, what are the numbers that drive this? So let's say for awareness, how many subscribers do we have on YouTube? How many people are in our newsletter? All these numbers will then help you understand how big, in aggregate is that awareness number for you. And then you're constantly looking at like, how do you convert that audience to become customers? So along all those pirate metrics, you're looking at what are these numbers that are kind of leading, they're like leading indicators to this lagging indicator, which is like your metrics. I know I'm going to go through a lot here, so bear with me. To kind of step back into like another company that everyone might be aware of, let's just look at Amazon, right, for a second. And so the growth metrics for Amazon have to do with these kind of different numbers, these various things that they're looking at, right? So one way to grow awareness is by expanding the vertical, right? Expanding what you sell. Initially, you sell books, then you go into CDs, then you go into something else, but each of those is now generating more and more awareness. Product inventory by vertical, how many products that you're providing impacts ultimately your ability to sell. The traffic per product page is also tied to awareness. So how good are you at SEO to be able to capture people that are searching for different things to come to your website? How good are you at converting them to purchase, right? So they invented the one-click button, the kind of buy with one click. And that was a huge patent that they were able to license out, but that was a huge lever for them to be able to increase revenue. And then average purchase value. Ultimately, like of the mix of products that you're selling, what's the value at what price point are you selling them? And then how are you encouraging repeat purchase behavior? And so you can see there, it's kind of like some of it's awareness, some of it's acquisition, some of it's revenue, some of it's retention. Now let's look at a large architecture firm. How would you kind of break out the same idea? Well, how do you grow your audience as an architecture firm? There are different ways to do it. One is by the types of services that you sell, right? So if your website is designed to capture people that are looking for residential services, that's one way to do it. Commercial, for each vertical, you're now growing your potential audience. You could break out into a different region, right? Architecture in many cases is very regional or very by city or by market. So expanding into different places that you can actually provide your services is another way to help increase your awareness. Qualified visitors to inbound channels. This is more like of the people that visit your website, how many of them are actually people that are in need of a new home? in need of remodeling, if you're doing residential, or in need of new office space. How good are you at attracting those different people that might want your services? Then conversion to executed contract. How good are you at actually evaluating making go or no-go decisions on the people that you're attracting, such that you're also increasing the likelihood that they'll become a client? How good are you at actually designing the client experience in order to execute the contract smoothly? Like, have you designed your contract to be super legible, or is it full of legalese? How much friction are you adding in the entire process of getting someone to sign? All those things are things that you can work on to help increase your conversion rate to execute a contract. The average contract value. How good are you at defining what the value of that contract should be, at planning your projects effectively, at budgeting, looking back at historical data to understand what you should be pricing your services at today? How good are you at getting referred clients? Are you picking clients based on their potential network, right, of other people that might have the similar need as they do? If you're in retail, right, that's potentially a good area, because whoever you're working with in retail might know other people that are also building out different retail stores for different clients. And then ultimately, how good are you at getting repeat work from that specific client? Working in residential is a very thing from working in, let's say, retail, right? Retail, if you pick up a gap early on in your career, there's numerous firms in New York that have built their entire career off of just one retail client. So how good are you at picking those clients as well that might lead to generating work? All of these things end up being part of your equation that you can then manage, right? The whole point of having these numbers is that now you have something you can actually focus your attention on. Small, medium, for SMB in architecture firms, very similar. You just might not have as much about, it might not be as much about regions as part of your equation. So yeah, so you might wanna, for this rest of the talk, we're just gonna focus more on like these little areas here. All right, sales funnel. You might be aware that you're doing sales, you might not. You might hate the word sales. Well, I'm sorry for you, but you're doing sales. No matter what you're doing as a firm owner, you are constantly selling. Whether you're very good at selling or not, that's a very different question, but you are a salesperson. And so I would highly encourage you to think about how to systematize your sales process so that you understand how people are actually coming to you in order to acquire your services. If you feel like you're not very good at being a salesperson, I highly suggest you hire a salesperson today. That should be one of your key priorities if you want to have sanity for yourself and for the rest of your team as well. So what is a sales funnel? Ultimately, it's a way of systematically bringing people along a journey, basically a series of steps. The reason why it's called a sales funnel is because at every step, there's a certain percentage of people that just might not be the right fit. Certain percentage of people are doing research on a residential architect. They may not hit your website because you're not in the right places to be found. So there's a drop off there. From the website to actually wanting to contact you, maybe you have your contact form buried under 3 different links, or they have to email you. You're continuously introducing friction in the communication process. You don't have a little chat bubble where they can just immediately chat with you and talk to somebody there immediately. You're going to get drop off. If they do reach out to you, how good you are at evaluating whether an appropriate client is going to impact, they might just not be a great client. So you're going to have to let them go in a sense. And so part of that due diligence process is another point of a drop off all the way and so forth, right? Until you get to contract signed. And even then, you should always be wary about firing your client. MVRDV went through this painful process and publicly kind of talked a little bit about it in a recent blog post that they had about the kind of like the mound that they had in London, right? Where they were getting paid very little for it. They should have let their client go immediately, but they didn't. So anyway, that's another point of a potential drop off for you and your business. But at the end of the day, what we've done here is kind of mapped over those previous metrics over to where they might sit along the sales funnel. How do you get people into the sales funnel, right? From a marketing perspective, how are you generating awareness? Well, there's 2 different ways. One is inbound, and then there's outbound, and there's potentially account-based, where it's more for like if you have an idea of like, let's say for the retail example, you know that within your market, there's like Gap, there's a bunch of other type of stores that you want to build services out for, and that's like your market. Well, you have a list of named accounts that you can try to go after, as opposed to just waiting for the phone to ring. You have a way to systematically go and reach out to people, build relationships, and actually improve your surface area of luck, so to speak. With inbound and outbound, it could be a little bit broader. Inbound is just understanding who's your audience, and then figuring out how to attract them through various campaigns, whether that's like social media, what you do on social media, what you do, you know, in events, or how you are able to kind of just generate interest in what you're doing. Outbound is a bit more targeted. That's where you have, you know, through various like public data sources, you're able to understand like who are the right people within your target audience that you're trying to attract, and then cold call them, cold email them. You would be surprised that this actually does work. We often think that just because we don't want to talk on the phone, that other people don't want to talk on the phone, but that's not necessarily the case. And so, you know, doing also what other people aren't doing is also a very key advantage for yourself. So just put yourself out there. It might not work today, but that person might remember you later and might say, hey, I actually really do need your architectural services. And so it's all about just how do you build that relationship. So inbound marketing, it's really focused a lot on the top of funnel. So research, like how do you get in front of people when they're researching for something, or when they might not know that they need you yet? And then how do you get them to come to your website and potentially contact you? We're going to pretend that we're a company here called Future Standard that designs livable spaces for innovative thinkers. And we're going to talk a little bit then about, okay, if that's the top of funnel and that's what inbound marketing is, like, well, what does that really mean? Well, in inbound marketing, you're really focused on like, what channel are you using to distribute your message? Facebook is a channel. Facebook groups are a channel, more specifically. Text messaging people is a channel. Direct mail, sending just like letters to people when you get something on your door to sell your house, like that's a channel. So they're just ways in which you can like systematically put your message out into the world, something that you've done, whether that's a recent project, whether that's a new type of service that you're doing. It's just, how do you get the word out? But to be more specific, different channels mean different things. So, and we can break it up by intent. Like, what's the mental state of the person? You know, where are they at in their own thought process regarding the need for your services? Low intent, an example might be like, oh, I just like architecture. You know, I'm a big fan of architecture. I don't really need an architect right now, but let me just browse and find out what cool firms are out there, or like, you know, read Architectural Digest or something, right? Versus the opposite, high intent is I'm actually looking on Google, searching for like local architects in Brooklyn, right? As an example. So that varying degree of intent is like, you want to understand how to position yourself and your message relative to where they might be. So hopefully when they go from that idea of just, I just like architecture, I just want to know who's out there, you're there, right? You're building that relationship with them visually. They understand, oh, like this is really cool. It's a really dope firm, interesting. Future Standards kind of they do very interesting aesthetic work, kind of interested in what they do. Let me follow them maybe. And then later they're kind of like, oh, I'm thinking about remodeling my house. You know, let me see if there's any guides on what that even means. Most architects don't put out guides, which is kind of crazy because you're not helping your customer sort of understand the process. But if you did that, then you'd be right there giving them information, building trust, building a relationship, even if virtually, even if not in person, up to the point where they're like, hey, I really need an architect, and I've been following your work for so long. I love what Future Standard is doing. Would be great if you would help us out, right? By then, you probably have already communicated what pricing looks like, what your fee structure looks like through your blog post. You're transparent about it. And by that point, they kind of already know what you are, what you do, and are going to buy into you. Let's have a specific story here. And by the way, Silva, keep me on time because I'm not sure how much. We're actually pretty good. Okay, so let's pretend you're for future standard, and our target is like residential. We really do well with clients that are like high wage earning, so they're lawyers or doctors, but we do really well with tech savvy. Like if they're not tech savvy, then we probably don't want them as a customer, because then all the cool things that we've put in place technology wise might not resonate with them, so they might not see the value. So I really only care about, as a business, as a firm owner for Future Standard, only care about high net worth clients that have the ability to get a new townhouse built or something like that, but they're also very tech savvy, because that's part of my own angle. So let's say out there's a family called the Espinoza family, and there's a trigger in their life. They need a new kid, right? And the decision is, we need to build a home, or we have enough saved right now. Let's just go buy a home somewhere. We want to grow a family. We want to build memories. Where do they start? Well, they're probably not going to start with like, where's the architect, right? They're probably going to start like, who do we know that's done this before? So they're going to reach out to their friends, right? How do we start? So if you've done a good job of being well known in your neighborhood, in your community, someone related to the Espinoza family might know about you, right? That's one way. The other way is that answering the question of, where do we start, right? So they might first start off in Google saying like, how do I get a house built in XYZ town? Hopefully you have on your website a guide that says how to get a house built in XYZ town, right? That guide should walk them through the entire complicated process of getting a house built in that town. Should let them know permitting timelines. It should let them know everything. Why? Because by the time they come to you, they will be fully educated about that process. They will know the complexity of that process. They will know the pros and cons of like not hiring an architect for that process. They're going to be much more well-informed and will negotiate less on questions for you down the line, because they understand now, oh, this is really, really complicated. The next question, we need to find a piece of property to buy. Who knows a broker? You should probably have really good relationships with brokers if you're doing residential, because these people are going to be way up the chain in terms of the questions and challenges that home builders and people that are looking to build a home are, and they're going to be the first point of contact. If you're not building relationships with brokers, you're missing out a huge opportunity to increase your surface area of luck on that front. And then at the very end of all these questions, there might be, who knows an architect, right? Because they're now informed by some other articles online about the process, where like they now realize at the very end of it all, hey, you need an architect to get a stamp for your drawings, or like, in this market, you definitely need it, or whatever that ends up being, but they're going to need an architect at some point. Then, as you can see, like in their own journey of coming down the funnel and researching, they're now like, okay, where should we buy? Like where in this town should we actually buy land? And that might be partly informed by the broker, should also be informed by the content you've hopefully have been able to put in front of them, evaluating for them what are the right conditions for a site that they should know. And this idea of giving away knowledge for free, right? Of like, a lot of architects might feel like, oh, but why am I giving away my service? They should be paying me for this. That's wrong. That's not the way you should think. The way that you should think is that you should be the first person that people are thinking about, because they trust you. You're not going to make your money off of telling them where to buy the property. You're going to make your services fees off of the actual design that you're providing for them. That's hopefully your differentiated value. Now, if you're able to give that away for free and just like get more people to come to you, why wouldn't you? So ultimately, that could lead to a decision. Let's make an offer on this piece of property. Hopefully you're part of that process. Maybe they've already built a relationship with you. They're taking you to the piece of property, the land that they're going to buy. You're engaging with them the entire way, and then they buy the house. Now, if you're not anywhere in this process up until when they buy the land or house, or, even this happens in commercial. I had a friend of mine who has an architecture firm in New York. all the time you get clients that have people that were building out, they already got the space, but the broker never really informed them about the quality of the space because they don't know. So they have these retail storefronts that are just ill-suited for the type of, whether it's like a restaurant or something that they just don't know what they don't know, right? And no one's been able to inform them. So guess what? Now as the architect, you look sort of like as the bad person because you're providing like all this counter information to their reality, right? You're now the one that's trying to bring to them like truth. And they probably don't want to hear it at that point when they've made a big commitment. So anyway, so all these things, if we kind of stack these questions in, like, how do we map over these questions that they're asking to where they're probably going to research? Who's done this before? They're probably going to use YouTube. Like YouTube videos today are amazing at breaking down information for people. You can learn anything on YouTube today. Other forms of content like Google and blog posts like that. Where to find a piece of property? They're probably going to look at Redfin. I'm not sure if Redfin or Zillow allows for ads specific to services, but that's a good place to put an ad if you're looking to find that right, the type of people that are looking for you. Word of mouth, obviously that's the more traditional way in which architects get their work, but also local SEO, like how to make it so that it's super simple to find you, right? You should be the first ranking firm when you're saying architecture firm in Hialeah, Florida. Your website should be designed so that every single zip code or city that you are in shows up somewhere on your website. And that way people, whether or not you've had built projects there before, that doesn't matter, right? It's just how do you organize your website so that you're easily found? And there's ways in which you can go about that outside of the scope of this conversation. But the other thing is press, right? Getting your work out there, that's a traditional form of it. You should keep doing that. Try to find other ways of getting press that's not just like in Art, Art Daily and kind of like the echo chamber of architecture. How do you get yourself in Forbes? How do you get yourself in like other places that just expand the scope of your potential audience? When people come to your website, there's various techniques you can use. You could retarget them. Basically, someone comes to your website and you can put ads in place. Whenever we see ads that are like, oh, I was just looking at this product. Like that could be you. Your services could be. The reason why that actually works is because people get distracted when they come to your website. And you want to be constantly reminding them about it. Now, there's the perception that, oh, this is like, it's tacky. It's like, like that's not the way that people buy goods today. I'm sure you buy things today, you yourself buy things because of these things. And it's not that you're buying bad products. It's that you forget, you're distracted. You're constantly kind of doing things and being reminded helps. So anyway, there's that piece. I'm going to kind of go through all this a little bit faster.
Yep, you got 5 more minutes, George.
Cool. Is there any comments or questions? Because I'm not looking at the chat. Oh, you're muted, Sylvia. I don't know.
I'll follow up with the question. It was like more clarifying question. So yeah, okay, keep on going.
All right, here's an example of how you can build your website. So let's say it's futurestandard.com. You would want to organize your URLs by projects, but then also by typology. So you have a different section that's like residential that clearly delineates that in the URL, then by city, and then by address, right? Because people search addresses. They don't search for conceptual project names. So you want, if someone's like looking at 232 Taffy, you want them to be able to find you, not like some really abstract conceptual name for the project that you came up with or your team came up with. So how else can you do that? In the footer, describing company name, address, phone, and some of this other stuff is just kind of like bullet points. Just like make sure you try to negotiate professional photos in every contract. It's always going to be a point of negotiation. They might tell you like, I'm not paying for that, blah, 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 but like figure out, just always include it and then remove it if it becomes a point. But that's a way in which you can also ensure that like this expensive photography is taken. And you can always say like these photos are going to be for them as well, that they can kind of like keep as keepsakes in memory, but it's also for you to be able to market your services later. Consider implementing something like Intercom or Drift on your website. It's the little chat widget. If you go to monograph.com, you'll see it there. It makes it super easy for people to contact you immediately. Like, just remove friction. Don't include barriers to like people reaching out to you. It's not productive. Create an intake form at least. So once they reach out to you, follow up with some sort of like type form or a Google form that asks all the questions you need to ask to make sure whether they have the budget. Brokers ask for funds. You should ask for proof of funds. If they don't have proof of funds, then that's probably a red flag. Or if they don't know how to get proof of funds, then that's probably a red flag. So include the way for you to not waste your own time in a very clear, systematic way. And then at the end, it's more like, what are the kind of blog posts that you should be writing to help people find you, right? So a checklist for building a home, delineate that entire process for people, how to evaluate an architect in Tampa Bay. That should be an article if you work in the Tampa Bay area, and then figure out how to use keyword research to help you on that front. Anyway, that's it. I'm gonna kind of stop it there. More to come, more to do. But yeah, I'm curious if anyone has any questions here in the last couple minutes that we have. Feel free to also, like, if you want to talk, I think you can, and we can kind of bring you on to talk as well. Yeah, we should kind of expand on all these things. Yeah, I know. It's like a lot to throw at everybody, but thanks for that comment, Andrea.
I really like what you said, George, about like how to make the process easier for your clients to find you. And also like, how do you even hire an architect? I find that like when I had friends ask, like, do you know an architect that can like help me with my house renovation? I mean, the first thing the architect's going to ask for is a survey, right? And like, I don't think most people, when they have the thought that I need an architect, have a survey in hand. So like even the process, like you shouldn't need to be an architect to know how to hire an architect.
Yeah, and you know, the thing is, like, there's other, like, the high ranking websites for that question are often like the AIA, which is fine, but I don't think it's as specific as probably what they need to know. They don't need to know necessarily how to hire a general architect. They need to know how to hire an architect in the specific city that you're in. So figuring out ways in which to make it hyper relevant for people is a way in which you can build trust. And I think that's the point here. There's only about 100,000 something licensed architects in the US. There's, I forgot the number, 65 million, is it? I forgot how many millions, but there's a lot of US people that live here. And so if you just think about that ratio, it's very likely that most people don't know an architect personally. So if they don't know an architect personally, there's so much opportunity to change that. And the unfortunate thing is that the entire industry has really, from the very beginning of the AIA through the Code of Ethics in the 1920s, has completely shunned marketing, unfortunately, right? They called it an ungentlemanlike thing to do up until the 70s. And so you have a whole generation of people still in practice today that believe that marketing is something beneath them to some degree. And what we're trying to do is change that. Like, if we really want to create change and we want to really figure out how to like add value to this industry, or to communicate value to our clients, we have to do it through marketing, full stop. Nothing else is going to do that. So we should be super encouraging people to start their own YouTube channels, super encouraging people to get on Netflix and have their own TV shows, super encouraging all this, because that's the only way you're going to bring full awareness into what we do on a day-to-day basis to the most amount of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Great way to end.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, George.
A quick fire walkthrough to a very specific way of looking at marketing. Wait, there was one last question here that I might want to answer. Actually, here, realistically speaking, for 2 people or 5-person firm, how much time effort should you spend on using? Basically, you're already like for digital marketing. Let's say if it's Instagram, right? Just like pick the channel. Like, record your work. You probably are already recording your work, but if you think about it, like architects, all they do is produce content. That's all you're doing every day. You're producing some form of drawing, you're producing something every single day that could be reshared and publicly available for other people. That's the point. You already are a content creator, you just don't know it yet. your 2 to 5 person firm, everyone there is a content creator. They just don't know it yet, and they just haven't looked into the tools that make it very easy to share. Jump on a Loom, record your screen, share that process, share your thought process on how you came to a design on Instagram. Let people in, build in public. Once you start to do that, you're going to find that you're going to be able to build pretty quickly a group of people that are following you and build a name for yourself in your local market. Look at NS Builders as a really great example. We had them on our show. They're a GC firm based out of, I think, Boston, Massachusetts area. Phenomenal content, phenomenal work. And they get a lot of their business from that. We like to talk a lot about Studio McGee here, interior design firm. No real background in interior design, somewhat, sort of educated in interior design a little bit, but they went from 2 people to maybe a 35 person business, 90 million in revenue in 6 years. Instagram, like, it's doable. It's just like, how do you systematically think about taking what you do and making sure you're designed for content production and like putting it out there? If nobody knows what you're doing, no one's going to come to you. And so you got to make it very easy to put out content where people are already in. So it might sound unrealistic, but if there's any amount of, if there's any section of non-billable time that is 100% worth it, it's that. Well, this is, you can tell this is the thing that I'm most passionate about. So,
yeah, we'll
sorry
continue
if I
it
come off as
again.
like super aggressive, but it's like, I get so hyped.
Thank you, George, for sharing all of that. We'll continue it in the future for sure.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate
Thank you, everybody. See you next week. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.